Well, I sort of gave a little introduction of myself and just a little bit of an overview, tiny bit, of California agriculture and the AgTech landscape. Walt, Priscilla, and Connie, why don't you go ahead and do the same. Introduce yourselves, your organizations, how they fit into this overall landscape, and say any other things that I missed about, sort of the framing of California agriculture and the AgTech landscape. So Connie, I'm going to start over there with you on that side.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Connie Bowen. Just because Micki's face is on the screen, I'm going to introduce her too. Micki works with me at Farmhand. She's not on this panel, just to clarify there. I am the founder of Farmhand Ventures. We're an impact investment firm, and we invest in the future of work in agriculture. We also work very closely in partnership with Gabe and Youtsey A&R and the Vine. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I won't get in the weeds on that right now. But basically, I have been working in agri-food tech since before we could decide to call it agri-food tech, which is really a mouthful, actually, and maybe wasn't a great decision. I've kind of explored the ag-tech VC investment side of house, the real asset farm management side, and ultimately, I focus on financing solutions for growers. And when you talk to most growers, what's their number one problem? Labor. So I really focus on labor, and I focus on working with founders who want to work with the folks who actually do the work in agriculture and basically build user-informed products, because those sell better. So that's me.
All right, my turn. Can you hear me? Okay, awesome. So good morning, everyone. My name is Priscilla Koepke, and I am the CEO of F3 Innovate, which is a new nonprofit located in California's Central Valley that is really focused on trying to turn the region into a global hub for ag tech innovation and climate smart solutions. And this is really, F3 Innovate is part of a larger initiative and effort in the region called the F3 Initiative that is a collaboration between industry players, academic institutions, as well as government agencies, both federal and state, and community organizations across the San Joaquin Valley. And it's an incredible endeavor, really focused on trying to drive that regional economic development and bringing equitable opportunities into the agri-food sector. And F3 Innovate has a really crucial role in this bigger initiative, focused on really empowering ag tech innovators, really catalyzing those commercialization efforts and bridging the gap between industry and the researchers and the innovators coming out of the academia. And for us, it's really about just empowering those innovators, really helping drive that commercialization and helping the ag tech space grow and scale. And so I think it's really part of that ecosystem. They saw and said, hey, this region in California's Central Valley just doesn't have something like this. And this is really a testament to the fact of something that's needed to do and bridge all of these different pieces and bring it together, and working with the other regions across the state to do that.
Nice morning, folks. I'm Walt Duflock, SVP of Innovation for Western Growers, and I have the best job in the world. I get to go all over the world and see where the cool ag tech stuff is happening for specialty crops. So I got to go to Carnegie Mellon earlier this year. I go to DC. I go to New Zealand, Australia. Someone's got to do it. And Peru and other places. And my Pittsburgh friends then come here, and Peru friends and Australia friends come here. It's a global game in specialty crops. So although our 2,000 members plus in Western Growers are focused on fruits, nuts, and vegetable growing in the western region of the U.S., there's global innovation happening everywhere. So we try and create opportunities where startups and innovators can get in front of growers in the dirt, in the field, with their automation equipment and or their biological solutions, and prove it out. So we look for innovators that are doing the work, get it tested, get it case studied, get it written up, and we look for groups that are doing good work like Strawberry Center, Strawberry Commission, and Cal Poly, with an industry movement forward that can get us new forms of capital, new ways to innovate, and then propagate that model into other folks like the veg side. And so my whole job is to find the stuff that's working and do more of it, and then report back. And it's a lot of fun.
So speaking of Peru, I was there 2 weeks ago and consistently heard from the growers with about 5,000 acre plus specialty crop farms. They're all using data-driven, tech-integrated approaches to farming. And I'll say the California growers who were there, hopefully some of them in the room today, were pretty impressed. Let's talk a little bit about the state of ag tech here in California, more broadly in the US, Some of you have a broad perspective here. Like, what's the state of technology adoption, capital, maturity of AgTech? And what are the areas that are seeing strong growth versus what are lagging behind? So loaded question, I know, but let's just get into the state of the ecosystem of agricultural technology from your perspectives. And no order, whoever wants to take that first, go ahead.
I'll jump in, and
All
I
right.
feel like, I feel like this is the kind of thing Walt and I like talk about on LinkedIn, actually. And
All the time.
We're doing
Dream
it like
about.
5:30 a.m. this morning. So, one thing that, again, we've watched AgTech investment, venture capital investment in AgTech increase, except for the past 2 years. It's been, venture capital in general has decreased. But year over year over year, and I've watched that happen through my career, and I thought, that's interesting. But at the same time, and I live in St. Louis, Missouri, some additional context. So I also have kind of a Midwest row crop perspective. I will say specialty crop is more fun. But adoption rates in no way correlate with investment rates. And even if you look at different companies who have raised different amounts of financing, again, sales, somehow, it's getting better, actually, now that we have kind of a market adjustment happening, but sales do not correlate with venture dollars raised. And that feels like a huge problem because, again, what's the point of innovation if you're not actually solving a problem? To me, the whole motivation for all the stuff we're doing here is to make agriculture work better. And there's a bunch of different ways you can take that. But in general, you've got this kind of early adopter group. You've got less research on specialty crop adoption than you have in row crop adoption. There's some really good reporting from like Farm Journal on US row crop adoption. But then it's, and like the harvest automation report is probably like one of the better options for specialty crop adoption, but like we just don't have that much data on US specialty crop adoption. So I'll throw it to Walt, who I know is doing some of that work.
It's a great point, and I would say from the capital perspective, it's really struggling. And I would just remind everyone, this isn't an AgTech problem or an agri-food tech problem, which is a mouthful. It is a system-wide problem. So what happened was Silicon Valley messed up, right? Don't tell them. They allowed startups to stay private longer, so there's now more private billion-dollar unicorns than public. And they allowed founders to get money out without having to go public. So the limited partners that write checks to venture capitals in all segments, not just agri-food tech, are now looking around going, my returns are not what I wanted. And for the risk I'm exposed to in venture capital, I can put my money elsewhere. So ag is feeling that. FinTech is feeling that, mobile apps are feeling that, everyone's feeling that. So we have a huge capital constraint, and our $53 billion after a 10-year run-up after Climate Corp got bought for $1 billion and everyone got so excited, we got to $53 billion in 2021, and what happened? We went straight down to 30 and to 16, and now first half of this year, $7 billion. So all of these startups who raised money in the land of milk and honey in 2021 are now looking around and facing nuclear winter in real time. It is rough. So I've said it many times to Startups Live. I put it on LinkedIn. At this point, for the next 2 years, survival is a bit of a competitive advantage because you just have to get through this. And this is what founders face. It's what they're facing now. A lot of the folks at this show are facing that reality. So capital's tough. And just to finish the thought on the adoption side, Ben Pallone and I track a lot of numbers and work with the startups. The good news is, even though capital is down, we've got 150 to 200 million in automation sales for specialty crops in 2024 forecast, and we think that number is going to go up over 3 years to in excess of $600 million. So you're going to see some economic activity in the next couple years. Is it going to be enough to get the venture capitalists to start writing checks again for the next round? We don't know, but we do see stuff happening, and where it's happening is interesting. Weeding, thinning, harvest assist with burrow, and platforms, DIY platforms like Farmhand. So the 10 to 25K robot side, good traction, units getting out there. The 400K to $1.4 million robots, some traction there. And you see some fundraising, like Carbon Robotics just announced a new $70 million fundraise. So we are seeing some pockets of goodness, but overall it's tough. The interesting part about Carbon is they've now added NVIDIA, hottest company on the planet on the hardware side, and Mood, one of the Kleiner Perkins named partners, to the board. So it's good to see non-AgTech investors stepping into AgTech. We now have to deliver the goods and get them some return on those investments.
To devil's advocate that, and also tie into like what I see the opportunity for California being, because like I could be working in a lot of different states, and this is by far the most interesting opportunity. I actually, at like FIRA 2 years ago, I think I cornered Glenda on crutches, which is kind of this is how you know you're committed to the ag-robotics space. You come to this conference on crutches. But because F3 was new, right? And I was listening to Gabe and Josh and different folks talk about this new F3 initiative. And I was like, oh my, we have such an interesting opportunity here. And the companies that you mentioned, most of the ones doing well, have significant presence near growers in the Central Valley. And that is super interesting, and it's a super interesting opportunity to drive an ecosystem driven by groups that are stakeholder informed, like F3, as opposed to tech bro, Silicon Valley informed, such that we can, again, finance solutions for California agriculture as opposed to trying to make a quick buck. So that's the good part of this. Like, we have the ingredients here to fix a lot of these problems.
So Priscilla, you're new to the ag tech space, but you're not new to entrepreneurship. You've run startups, AI, cybersecurity space. What are some of your early observations about the ag tech space and where the bright spots and the dark spots are, so to speak?
Yeah, no, that's great. So picking up on where Walt and Connie kind of left off and touching on those points, I think the reason we're all here, right, automation, robotics, we're seeing that space grow significantly, and the different solutions that are coming out to address the different challenges across, Walt said you don't see a lot of that, right, in the specialty crops, but there's a lot of effort in that area. And just, I think the stat I've heard is just generally farmers across the country, the tech adoption for farmland is like 5%, which I think resonates with what I've seen. And the things that I've heard, I had the pleasure of traveling the last few days with a group of Aussies and Brits who are here we're going around the Central Valley and visiting all sorts of farms, and their perspectives on the things that they're doing versus what is being done and adopted here really resonated with that number. But I think in terms of what I'm seeing growing, for certainly the automation and robotics, certainly a lot in the data-driven decision-making solutions around how to catalyze, looking at the irrigation side of things, the fertilization side of things, as well as sustainable agriculture solutions for water conservation and soil health monitoring, and really going into that conversation about quality versus quantity. So heard a lot from the growers that we met just about that, like with everything that we're facing right now around climate change and how that's affecting their crop yields and whatnot. It's that conversation of how do we address this issue of quality versus quantity and the sustainable solutions that can help them do that.
Just as a follow-up, I usually think of ag tech as the intersection of digital, mechanical, and biological technologies intersecting in new and creative ways. The biological space, and specifically, we talk a lot about, chemical to biological transition, and it's a big focus area of Western growers. That's obviously not the focus of this conference per se, but those tools will continue to work hand in hand with the robotic tools through things like precision application of spray and other technologies. What's the comment on that, on the state of maturity of some of these biological alternatives to chemicals on that sort of other side of the spectrum of ag tech as well?
Yeah, no, I think biological's a really hot space, and as you mentioned, Western Growers has put a big focus on it. Dennis Donahue drives that for us with Peter Redhilton and the War 42 team who are here at this show. And really the focus there is we've got to get something to reduce the pressure of these chemicals that are getting restricted and banned on usage. So there's two paths. There's biological products like biocontrols, which can replace pesticides, and there's biostimulants, which can stimulate growth, and then there's genetics, right? And so loosely, those three areas are where we focus. And from a Western grower's perspective, our growers are most concerned about the pesticide regulations. So they said, find the biocontrols that are in the market that are gaining traction and get them through their paces, right? Give them the field trials, give them the case studies, report back on where it's working. And really the number one request, and I can't stress this to startups enough, is Show the grower where the biocontrol impacts their operation at a financial level. Get to the line on the spreadsheet that you impact and show them how much you impacted in an organization like theirs, and then you've earned the right to a conversation. So we want to do as much of that identification of biocontrols and running it through tests and math as we can. That's why we do the Biological Summit every year, and that's just a really focused 2 days on that topic. I do think that the biological space writ large will be the first or second highest amount of venture funding for the next couple of years. It'll probably go back and forth with Climate Smart. And again, we've got to be careful that Climate Smart doesn't become a hype factory, right? Because right now you can't count it, can't measure it, can't verify it. Biologicals, we need to do the same thing. Count it, measure it, verify it. And figure out the stuff that's working and figure out the stuff that candidly is snake oil, as Pam Marone says, rightly so, and get rid of the snake oil folks and help them not get funding, right? And help the folks that are real get funding. So we're really into that space, and specifically the biocontrols and genetic part of it. The biostimulant space probably has wider adoption, the yield growth, especially in the Midwest crops. One interesting point about biologicals, it's being adopted other places faster than here. So you hear about all these adoption of tech and US-based and US-led, but in reality, South America and Brazil and places like that and parts of Europe are ahead in that race. So again, when we travel the planet, we see different adoption levels. We're not leading in a lot of key categories, and I would argue in this one, we're not at the moment.
But to play off of that, again, one, California is going to regulate faster than everywhere else, and that's going to force us to be faster here, which we have to talk about how we offset some of those costs for growers. But then the second bit to directly relate all of that to this automation room is one of the main bottlenecks and constraints to biological scale, because arguably we're on biologicals round 3 right now, is that you actually, biology interacts with biology, to be like super simplified about it. And so you need to know what's happening where you're putting the thing in order to know if the thing works. And so you have a lot of things that show great data on super terrible land, bad biology soil, because you're putting anything in there, and yay, you've inoculated something, so now there's some life. But in looking at that where it fits on your budget, you need to understand, okay, it makes sense on this land, it doesn't make sense on this land, and it needs to be cheap enough to pull that biological soil data, which it's not right now. And it needs to be behaviorally easy to adopt. A lot of these biological inputs require additional passes. And like this is where I say, okay, let's think about how behaviorally this fits into a farm operation. If you're asking someone in this labor environment to do more work, no, it's not going to happen. That adoption won't happen.
And think about the way that you apply this stuff, to your point. I wish there was more investment, candidly. And let's just say this. I think it's a wordplay game in some level. I don't want to call it a transition to biologicals because that suggests that chemistry is going away tomorrow.
Right.
And if you look at Shane Thomas, and he's as smart as anyone in the space, Shane will tell you, and he's run the math, that the crossover point between the biological revenue figure and the chemistry revenue figure is 2043. And at that point, both of them will be over $100 billion businesses, right? So chemistry's not going anywhere, but it is going to get heavily regulated, I agree.
Yeah.
But if you've got a $100 billion business in 19 years, we should manage toward both of those. So what makes chemistry more efficient should be considered just as beneficial as transitioning to a biological product.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we make chemistry more efficient is spraying it better and more efficiently and more effectively in smaller doses and then measuring the results.
Yeah.
So I think the hardware players at this show have a lot to say about how efficient that chemistry gets and how much that portfolio shift happens over time.
That's right. I'm going to move us on to the next topic and let each of you sort of dive into this, your own sort of, I would like to just talk a little bit more. So Walt, starting with you, Western growers, largest producer of specialty crops in the Western U.S., you represent that group. Talk a little bit about some of the driving problems that farmers are facing that's guiding your innovation activities at Western growers. And then, talk a little bit about how your offices are structured, what kinds of activities you do and your team does in support of sort of creating solutions for your grower members.
Yeah, well, we're here at FIRA. That's one of them, right? Give startups and growers the opportunity to get in the dirt together, right? And our driving force for this whole action toward FIRA, our field trial programs, our case study programs, our partnerships, our economic templates so growers can do their own math, and soon our Western Growers Assist, where we'll help you do the math in conjunction with our templates, is all driven on labor. And if you look at labor, and I put this up on LinkedIn last night and got a whole lot of traction around it, which was cool. We're in a position in California where we are paying $16.3 billion for 850 million hours of work a year. Just let that sit there for a minute, right? 16.3 billion, 850 million for 425,000 full-time equivalent workers. And because the domestic workforce is increasingly not available, we've had to go to H2A in larger numbers. We're now a 90% domestic, 10% H2A market in California with 44,000 H2A workers. That's tripled the last 5 years, that H2A number. Well, look what happens to the cost of labor. You go from $17.25 for California labor to $19.75 for adverse effect wage rate H2A labor. But that doesn't tell the whole story, because you then have housing, transportation, and food costs at about $7 to $9 an hour. So people who ask, well, we're not going to have $30 labor costs. Well, no, we are. And we do, right? So you look at the numbers, 1975, AWAR goes up 5 to 6% a year. That number's going to 21. I just told you housing, transport, and food, $7 to $9 an hour. You're at $30 an hour next year. So you look at that, and there's only two solutions to $30 labor. You either automate your way out of some of it, or you relocate those acres. So that's what I think is going to happen to California and other Western region specialty crop states, is if we can't get that labor under control, and Washington State's not far behind us in terms of math, ask some of our friends up there. When you hit $30 an hour labor, and you've got a much different labor structure in Mexico, in Peru, in Brazil, and oh, by the way, Peru's not sitting still. They were at IFPA last week with a 40 by 40 booth called Avocados in Peru, recruiting new growers to come down there and move avocados. So we have a hair on fire situation on two ends. We're pushing farm labor up to $30 for H2A, and that's an increasing share. And at the same time, Peru is economically developing teams to the U.S. to come recruit farmers. So it's tough on both sides.
And it's about a tenth of the labor cost.
Absolutely. $4 an hour is what I hear down there.
Yeah.
And $4 an hour, you've got a 100% retention rate, and they're very happy.
I just got the update. Minimum wage in Peru is $250 a month. Piece rate can get you up to $1,000 a month.
Right.
Yeah.
Have to chime in and add an element beyond the economics, which are also real, which is also people who do work in agriculture are people, as a real reminder there.
Right.
And there are also, I won't give my entire seminar on ag labor, but find me later if you want to talk for a couple weeks about it.
You definitely should.
But when you talk to growers in Mexico, they have a shortage of labor available. There are many different macroeconomic trends, plus climate change. We do not talk enough about how in a scenario of 2.5 degrees Celsius warming, we talk about how crop yields are impacted. The economic impact on people's ability to do work outdoors, particularly in regions like this where it gets real hot and the wet bulb temperature makes it literally unsafe to do work and varying degrees of illegal. We can't get our crops out of the field, and we're going to have an increased frequency of events like that. And so it's not just about the basic economics of labor, because when I've done a lot of work in the Delta region of Tennessee, Mid-South kind of, and Mississippi, Arkansas, and those all have bottom minimum wages, right? And so growers there will say, okay, we could grow specialty crops and better economics than California, but that is not it. That's not everything. This unskilled workforce is deeply skilled. And we don't do enough of integrating that group of people into co-developing really these solutions that make their jobs more attractive, more sustainable. And so there's a way we can find this in-between that makes ag labor more attractive.
And safe.
Yes.
And safer.
Yeah,
there are a few farmers out there, right, that are doing a lot to integrate technology to make the job easier and safer for those workers. Yeah. Not necessarily jumping to removing them, but how do we make this easier for them so they can still do their jobs?
Right. So that's teeing you up, Priscilla, for the next question. F3, Farms, Food, Future, Innovate, new nonprofit, as you mentioned, to the Central Valley driving innovation in agriculture. There's a specific focus, at least there was the outset, of engineered solutions, which is perfectly fits with the theme of this conference. Talk a little bit about some of the unique approaches that F3 Innovate is taking to really help scale up that ecosystem and ultimately the solutions from the Central Valley as you see it.
Yeah, happy to. So, new organization, right? So we look at this as transformative innovation is really not from a single action, but it's really a product from a comprehensive ecosystem that is really building and enforcing each other each step of the way. And that really has informed the design of the different programs and services and how they align with what we are offering, right? And so the first one is what we're calling the commercialization engine, and that's really about empowering those innovators, about putting resources into those ideas and turning them into market-ready products and solutions, and working with our key university partners, UC Merced and Fresno State, in order to do that. It's about providing the training to those researchers and those innovators to help them every step of that commercialization process. It's about, for us, building that bridge between industry and academia and making sure that the solutions that are coming out of that world are industry driven and they are solving real world problems. It's about having those growers at the table with us. And I think generally I would say that this is really about building capacity. So when we think about what are the resources needed to do all of these things, and what is the infrastructure needed to do all of these things. So if we think about, just for example, like AI and ag, we haven't really touched the tip of the spear yet on like what is the impact that this can make in this industry. And so we're thinking a lot about, what can we do from a resource perspective, from an infrastructure perspective to enable that to happen and to really find those opportunities. The other piece of what we're doing is around talent, and it's about building those workforce initiatives, investing in the next generation of leaders in agri-food tech. And so thinking about how can we work with industry to curate internships, fellowships, apprenticeships for this next generation to ensure that they're getting that hands-on experience so the first day they enter the workforce, they can design, they can build, they can sell, they can lead in this space. And we want to make sure that we are investing in the local community in order to do that. And the last piece of that, of what we're doing is what I'm calling the Catalyst Fund. And so they're in the early design phases, but when we talk about this capital stack and what's available and what's not available, in like, how do we find a way in that early stage where it's from solution and you're not yet attracted to VC money? How can we provide that non-dilutive support to help get those ideas, those high potential startups, the support that they need to continue to grow and not just say, I have to close shop and put this on the shelf because I can't get the funding anywhere else. And so I think all of that is really with this idea of economic development and really bolstering the food security and ultimately the national security of why this sector is so important for us.
Great. Thank you, Priscilla.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, no, so just following off of Priscilla's points, I want to go specifically into the workforce aspect of it, because that is Western Growers' third leg of the stool for my team. It is automation, yes. It is biologicals, yes. But who's going to sell, design, deliver, and take care of all of those fancy robots and all of those fancy biological genetic solutions? We need a new workforce that's ready for all of this. How many startups in the audience have no trouble finding skilled workers at the ready every time you post an opening, right? None of you raise your hand. How many growers find somebody coming off Cal Poly, Fresno State, Davis, ready to roll on day one? You'll get the occasional one, right? But it's still a bit of an outlier. We need more ag tech education on the stuff that really matters and getting curriculum updated. And I can tell you that Carrie Peterson is a rock star in this area because she's taken a $900,000 CDFA grant in this area, provided 100 scholarships to get students into these organizations, identified, I think, 18 curriculum components across community colleges in California that are on point for growers' needs. and then bundled those up with some marketing and called it a program that community colleges can educate on. We thought we'd have to spend that grant money building curriculum. We just had to identify it and market it, it turns out. So that allowed Carrie to then build an app and keep track of the people who have this education for the people that are looking for people that have that information. It's a small start, but it's a great start, and we're gonna need a lot of it, because when I talk to growers and they look at what you're gonna need, it's not just the robots and the biologicals, it's the food safety, it's the drones, it's all of this tech. It's a great way to get kids engaged with ag, but we've gotta help them get trained before they get to the growers and startups. And right now, growers and startups are being asked to do a lot that the educational system could do before they got out. We're working hard to push that forward at Western Growers.
Now, I'll just point out that's also a big objective of F3 as well. There's we didn't even talk about a large workforce with the community colleges initiative that's embedded as part of that. Connie, I want to turn it over to you next. Farmhand Ventures and my innovation office that you see in art, we're partnered up to deliver a program called Vine Build and Connect. Give an overview of what we're working on, how that complements F3 Innovate and the Western Growers programs and other programs out there that really supports translation of technology from our research universities, as well as demonstrating fields, tech in the fields.
Yeah, so quickly to define it, we have two separate programs basically, and they're all, I'll just leave them as two separate programs. We've got Build, which is effectively a venture studio. So we focus on commercializing solutions coming out of UCs, from PIs, researchers, applied research happening in extension, also from the state schools. So we work with Fresno State as well as UC Merced. Lots of fun overlap with Priscilla and Josh's work there. Both Josh's, I guess. And so that's, we have had, I think, issues in AgTech tech transfer for forever, frankly. Part of it is that we really only know how to build either things that immediately get funded and go into corporations, and that's where we're really only doing stuff for corn and soybeans still, or we have stuff that needs to go this venture funding pathway. And you've got folks who are not incentivized to leave their academic positions to commercialize these solutions, but who do want to see their research see the light of day and actually solve problems in the real world. So we collaborate with those folks, and we bring in external leadership teams. Micki leads this program. And we help create companies, whether it's, we're working with an almond dryer company out of Merced right now. We're working with a super cheap nitrous oxide sensing company out of Berkeley right now. And helping them go through all the early stages of validating an idea. We're also working with, we have a second program, it's called Connect. And through Connect, guess what we do? We connect startups and growers. Who would have guessed? And we basically do that through demo days.
Connie.
So we're actually having our first official Connect demo day November 4th at Kearney outside of Fresno. And we'll showcase 6 different companies. We help to select those companies, we being Farmhand Ventures. We have the kind of ability to not only do the technical due diligence, which farmers are capable of doing, actually. You can kind of say, this thing kind of works. But also the commercial and team due diligence and say, okay, well, this founder, this engineer is never going to listen to a thing that the customer says. And like, that's something you actually would rather figure out on the front side. Or, this company has $2 in the bank or negative dollars in the bank and is going to go out of business in a week. So maybe don't pay for a unit that they can't manufacture today. So we help to vet all sides of these businesses, put them in front of growers, and then, again, basically I've been describing this as you've got a loaded pond. We're putting in the fish. The fish are the farmer customers, and we're bringing these validated fisher people who are the startups. And if they land customers coming out of that, and they want to do field trials with growers in California in these different regions, we will help them fund some of those trials, because we have to start to grease the flywheel such that we take some of the risk off of growers and also provide some non-dilutive financing to startups such that they can actually get on more fields, iterating more quickly, because we've got a lot of big problems we have to solve. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
No, it was a great overview. And I would say things like the Catalyst Fund, which Priscilla mentioned, are like a perfect complement, because that really hard, non-dilutive funding is going to be a critical aspect to getting some of these new innovations off the ground. And also, I would also like to continue to find funding to support field trialing. And one of the things as we sort of advance technologies, particularly things like biologicals and things that take a pretty deeply scientific approach, we need to actually fund trialing these technologies in an independent way. This is what cooperative extension's bread and butter is looking at, evaluating, and then disseminating science and technology for industry, and that's been sort of a role we've had for over 100 years. So we'd like to continue to grow the funding pool to support innovations, whether they're new companies coming from anywhere in the world to California to solve problems here. We can help de-risk market, team, and tech. We can help grow technologies from within the ecosystem, train the workforce, and I think the ecosystem that we're building is figuring out ways to work together to make all that happen. So just on that sort of, we only have a couple minutes left here, but wrapping up here, I've really seen a growth in this ecosystem over the last 7 years. I mean, we have new workforce programs at the community college level, the state college, the state university level, and the UC system that integrate, engineering, computer science, biological, agricultural, food science disciplines together in new and creative ways. We've got venture funds, and those of, we've all seen the cyclical nature of what's happening there, but I think they're getting smarter. I think there was a lot of dumb money thrown at things in the earlier days that I think is getting smarter and smarter and smarter, even as capital dries up. And then, we're really also seeing the growers and industry getting smarter and more open to adopting some of these new technologies, and the FIRA is a testament to that. Also the Biological Summit, which is going to be here as well. Just give some parting thoughts, really, on where we go next with this ecosystem, and sort of what's the next level of collaboration, innovation, as we sort of mature the next phase of AgTech into existence.
I can, to me, it's collaboration. These problems are really hard. We have a lot of interesting players here. No one player is going to, on the ecosystem level, solve all the problems. And so, I am so glad to be able to collaborate with all three of you. And, I've been working with Walt and Gabe for years, and Priscilla, I love getting to know you as you drink from the fire hose here. And, we need to be working together and not kind of not pushing each other out of the way and being territorial. I think that's a super, super critical thing to developing kind of the robotics AgTech ecosystem.
Yeah, I would agree with that, right? It's we all have collective strengths, and I think we just need to make sure that we're doing that in a very integrated way. And I think it's about ensuring that we're aligning where do we stand in terms of our goals, and doing that in a collective manner, doing that in a supportive manner. And there's a lot of things that we're doing that overlap, which is fantastic, right? Because more the merrier in this ecosystem. There's so much to do. There's plenty to go around, and just ensuring that we're not being extractive from each other, and that everyone in the room, right, all of the players in the value chain of ag are coming together and working together and finding a way to move this forward.
Yeah. I would say on the late stage, come by tomorrow, 9 o'clock. We've got a press conference that'll really show you the collaboration taken to the next level with a launch that we're doing tomorrow with pretty much everyone on stage and beyond. We are going to put robot R&D and testing facilities in the Central Valley and on the Central Coast at scale. We're going to give folks a chance to do what they do at FIRA when they show off the robots 24/7, 365. And we've got some nice partners in that effort. We've got some nice news coming tomorrow, so stay tuned. So on the later stage stuff, that's the goal, is to do more of this more often. On the early stage stuff, it's really getting the folks, and all four of us talk to founders, all levels, all places, universities, graduate students, early stage startups. I would argue the big challenge is getting them reality checked sooner than later. I see a lot of folks who are 2 years in and just been heads down building a product, and they have no idea what the economics of that product have to look like for the grower. I don't want to say they've wasted 2 years, but if they're not careful, they've wasted 2 years, right? And so the earlier we can get to them in the innovation funnel to stop them from going down that failed economic path, the more we can route them to a better and more appropriate path. That takes work by growers. It takes work by everyone on the stage. You've just got to be willing to look at the pitch decks, look at the products, and do the work to help them out. But if we do it, we'll get the right folks down the funnel, and we'll get the folks that aren't going the right way recorrected or pointed in a different direction, which is a win for the space.
We're out of time, but I want to give one quick shout out to an ecosystem partner who is here in Woodland, but not here on stage, John Sellup and AgStart. Hosted some of you. AgStart is the largest wet lab incubator in the Central Valley currently, located right here in town. He's also a consummate collaborator and really a great partner with all of us here. So I suggest if you'd like to hear more about how you can get involved with each of our programs, come find us. We'd love to talk to you, love to figure out how to plug you in and your companies into the whole ecosystem. So thank you for being here, thank you for listening, and look forward to more. Take care. Thanks to our panelists.